The Great Leap Forward was the second of two 5-year plans instigated by Chairman Mao Zedong, to modernize China, beginning in 1958 and ending in 1962. The goal was to shift China from primarily an agrarian economy to an industrial one. At the core of the plan was agrarian pseudoscience from Soviet Trofim Lysenko. They thought arbitrarily that planting seeds deeper would result in more robust root systems, and that plants of the same species would not compete, so they could be planted closer together than was common practice at the time. The chairman insisted on instituting these policies in his own country. By multiplying crop yields and incubating heavy industry in the countryside, he would drag China out of poverty, end subsistence farming, and become a world force. No opposition was tolerated. To speak against Mao was to be punished, your house torn down as material for new roads, stripped of rank and sent to clear trees with axes, other forms of brutal labor, and tens of millions of citizens died in a mass famine. Crop yields, of course, declined. Mao's rule that farmers serve the collective and keep nothing for themselves meant local officials had to take whole crops and farmers starved. Officials over-reported yields so that the disaster wasn't even fully known until far too late. Something like 33 million people died as a result of this famine, mostly the farmers that Mao wanted to promote as heroes. It's hard to know for sure the exact death toll. Records are vague and estimates vary widely. Between 15 and 45 million, I've taken the average of the estimates. Part of the Great Leap Forward was an anti-rightist campaign which promoted the hero mother and the hero farmer and cast intellectuals as traitors. Academics were beaten, sent to forced labor camps, and sometimes murdered. There was nobody to tell Mao he was wrong, and that his pseudoscience theories were bullshit. Why start with communists? Don't fascists hate communists? Yes. The left right spectrum can be construed as a horseshoe. In the middle, views are largely the same. As you move away in either direction, views diverge, but they start to reconverge on some issues like totalitarianism, consolidated power, and anti democratic practices. Remember, Mussolini was a communist before he invented fascism. Fascists have no real ideology. They oppose, they divide opponents against each other to consolidate their own power. Scratch a fascist, discover a nihilistic opportunist. Now, on to Eco's third feature of Ur Fascism: action. Irrationalism, writes Eco, demands action. Action for its own sake. It must be independent of thinking. It must precede thought. The paragraph twists suddenly, and the demand for action is really a rejection of not only thought, but intellectuals. Eco paraphrases and misattributes Hans Jost. When I hear talk of culture, I reach for my gun. The line is not from Goering, at least not in writing, but from Jost's agitprop play Schlageter. When I hear the word culture, I release the safety catch on my Browning. This was a Nazi propaganda film shown certainly to Adolf Hitler and probably the people to whom it's often misattributed, to Himmler and Goring and who's the other one? God, the fucking fascists are all the same to me. It's possible they used the line through the years themselves, but ultimately the only written source is Yost. Ultimately, fascist intellectuals attack modern culture. Critics are effeminate, educated people lack common sense. All that's required is that Bible and that Second Amendment. If anyone tries to tell you a thing is simple, just that simple, they are selling something. And just do a quick check that what they're selling isn't fucking fascism. Recall Schwarzenegger's frequent use of the phrase little girly men to refer to Democratic opponents and candidates. When this was his habit, I hadn't quite grown an ear for homophobia. In modernity, the sound of a steroid robot with an Austrian accent attempting to feminize political opponents makes my hackles rise. This hasn't come up in conversation lately. It's no longer his habit. The last time someone asked Schwarzenegger about that phrase, he said he regretted using it. Perhaps he has grown. No, he regrets the phrase because when you're elected, you'd have to work with Democrats and it damages the relationship. No awareness at all about homophobia, the harms thereof, and the relationship to fascism. The film Idiocracy imagines a very stupid future when any intellectual speech or any intellectual person is seen as effeminate in his final trial up against a judge driving a gigantic penis shaped murder truck. Joe Bowers, the protagonist, gets a chance to make a persuasive speech in his defense. The judge listens carefully, then cocks his hand in the universal gesture for gay. The audience goes wild, and the penalty phase resumes. It's tempting to attribute anti intellectualism merely to stupidity. I do worry about the stupids, truly, I do. But I worry more about the information system. Liberals believe in providing good information in good faith and trusting people to collectively make good decisions. Fascists, on the other hand, create an in group around a cult of ignorance. They outgroup intellectuals so that the truth can be neither known nor trusted. Two strategies. One, action. Two, as the minority party, oppose everything. Draw out even the simplest proceeding and blame the governing party so they look feckless. The Republican Senate works for rich people and corporations. They aren't necessarily fascist. Rich people and corporations want two basic things: no new regulations, ever, and lower taxes. When Republicans take power, they execute these two priorities. All legislation stalls. The Congress do nothing but look like hell, like they're doing something. They lower taxes, that's all, and then kick every other can down the road. Our Mitch McConnell seems to have a personal priority, which is a hard right Supreme Court. By stalling the Senate for 6 of Obama's 8 years in office, he was able to prevent the selection of over 100 federal court judges. We remember his gains around the Supreme Court and forget the lower courts. Those courts hear suits about new laws. Even if a Democratic government can pass a new law, Republicans immediately sue on every possible basis, no matter how well or ill advised, and trust Republican appointed justices to block and forestall all new laws and regulations. This is minoritarian, but not necessarily fascist. Donald Trump, however. Fascists like unilateral action. The administration hollowed out the State Department. This government agency runs thousands of diplomats that maintain our position on the world stage, protect our interests abroad, prevent armed conflicts, and pave the way for peaceful retributions when armed conflicts do break out. But fascists don't use diplomats. Fascists like war. Talk of cultured solutions make them reach for their Brownings. A Department of State implies a complicated world in which problems can't be solved with a handshake or a personal meeting at Camp David, or at most, moving an embassy. Trump claimed to have signed more bills into law than any previous president in their first term. A blatantly fraudulent claim. Because action. Almost none of the laws he did sign actually accomplish anything. They're mostly suggestions. They prevent Obama-era policy from being enacted, or just virtue signal. His chief accomplishments are bizarre and counterproductive border wall policy, and equally bizarre and disruptive Muslim immigration bans. Both these objectives fundamentally play to a racist base. The Muslim ban took 3 tries to arrive at anything even remotely workable, and the implementations were chaotic, conflict-ridden disasters. The wall is a rhetorical triumph, but a physical nightmare. Calling it a wall requires changing the meanings of the word wall differently in different places along the length of the border. And actual completion of the thing would be an unmitigated ecological disaster. But the man has a way of looking active. He's in the news every day, talking to people, holding rallies, signing meaningless things, shaking hands with foreign dignitaries. When COVID hit, he held daily pressers. Chaotic, mindless daily pressers, where he talked over his experts and told lies, creating drama and uncertainty and controversy in the name of action. Weaklings deliberate. Strong men, or strongmen, settle it themselves. Our 3-tiered system with a bicameral legislation is designed to slow down decision-making. Separation of powers provides checks and balances. 2 houses with different priorities means we really need consensus to make anything happen. Which brings us to Rule 2. Make Democrats look weak by dragging everything out. This takes advantage of the sausage factory. The system is designed to prevent tyranny. Consensus requires that disparate representatives make compromises. Everyone has to benefit. No coalition, therefore, can gain too much power. Things move slowly. Only when things are really, really obvious, and not always even then can progress really be made. Republicans just refuse to participate in even the most rudimentary legislation when Democrats have majorities. They're interested in power, not governance. Obama writes about trying to get any legislation done. There were always Republicans who said that they were willing to help if the Democrats would compromise. So Democratic lawmakers would spend months hammering out languages and making compromises so that a few Republicans would get what they wanted in order to support a bill. And then, after spending all of the social capital, they'd find Republicans would just back out of the deal anyway. The goal was never to achieve a compromise so that work could get done. The goal was always to slow things down, drag it out to the maximum extent, make it look contentious, so the Democrats would seem weak and feckless. Biden is struggling with this same reality, and he was there when Barack Obama was president. He should know better. Even agreeing to authorize payments for the bills they already ran up, this quarterly fight to raise the debt ceiling, is about making Democrats look feckless and weak. This isn't a choice that we can really make. Not raising the debt ceiling would crash the economy. This is not to do with future expenditures. It's about the tax cuts that Republicans did for rich people 4 years ago. Anti-intellectualism uses a lot of sophistry. So, last point, just so you know about these kinds of arguments and can observe for them. Sophistry means an argument that seems good if you already agree with the conclusion, but that contains one or more logical errors. The most common of those being the straw man argument, reducing the opponent's argument to something they aren't even saying, and that is easily defeated. Hence, guns don't kill people, people kill people. Hence, guns don't kill people, people kill people. Every mass shooting drives calls for regulation, and then the right-wing media explodes with various forms of this argument. But nobody is suggesting guns get up and kill people all on their own. The truth is, the more people are armed, the more violence there is, and the more lethal is that violence. Hence, if people evolved from chimpanzees, why are there still chimpanzees? Well, we share a common ancestor some 6 million years ago. They are our cousins, not our ancestors, and just because one organism achieves a beneficial adaptation doesn't mean all other instances of that organism immediately die. This is an argument no one is making. The joke is only funny if you know literally nothing. So, act for no reason. Act without reason. Rationalize it later with bad arguments. Trust your supporters to defend you, and in defending you, come to believe more strongly. Prompt them to violence, as violence is the ultimate form of belief, both expression and cause. And when people vote you away, refuse to go. Do everything to steal the election back. Sue everyone. Pressure state houses to overturn the results. Blame the Democrats. Don't worry if it's all illegal, every bit of it. And that nothing will withstand a court decision. Just attack. The safeties are off the Browning.